rain was falling hard on Michigan Avenue, drumming against sidewalks slick with neon light. Beneath the roar of the L train, a little girl stood barefoot on a flattened cardboard box, clutching a guitar that looked twice her size. Her voice cut through the storm. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Behind her, a giant billboard flashed the face of Daniel Whitaker, millionaire and judge of the nation's biggest talent show. What she didn't know was that this stranger smiling from the screen was the father who had abandoned her mother years ago. Before we go deeper, tell us in the comments, have you ever seen a moment when fate put two lives back on a collision course? Stay with this story. What happens next will break your heart and rebuild it. Her name was Maya Delgado, only 7 years old, with bangs plastered to her forehead, and eyes too determined for her age. Every note she sang was meant to buy one more day for her mother. Rosa Delgado, frail and coughing beneath an awning, tried to hide the sickness that was slowly stealing her strength. She pressed a scarf against her lips as if she could stop both the chill in her chest and the truth in her daughter's eyes. Maya sang harder when she heard that cough, as if her voice could be a roof strong enough to keep the sickness away. People slowed their steps, not because they expected to, but because something in that voice forced them to listen. Some tossed coins into the cap at her feet. Some pulled out phones and filmed. A retired bluesman named Mr. Hollis Harmonica, hanging from his neck, stopped and watched until the last line faded. "Songbird," he said softly, "you got more soul in you than most men twice my age." He handed her a felt pick from his case, a tiny gesture that felt like a crown. Maya clutched it, nodded, and whispered, "I'm saving up. Mom needs medicine." His eyes tightened, and he tipped his hat without another word. The city wasn't gentle, but it was still human. A bus driver waved them on without a ticket when he saw Rosa shivering. A choir director at St. Maria's Church let Maya practice in the back row, her small voice blending with voices that filled the vaulted ceiling. She learned to breathe with the music, to stretch notes longer than her fear. And when she was alone, she whispered promises into her pillow. One day she would sing on a stage big enough to save them both. That promise took shape on a waterlogged flyer taped to a lamppost. In bold letters it read, "American Star Auditions, Los Angeles Dolby Theater. The prize, $1 million. Maya's heart kicked in her chest. That number meant hospital bills, paid surgeries, covered her mother's smile restored. She pressed the flyer flat against her coat, turned to Rosa and said, "I can do this, Mama. I'll win for you." Rosa tried to protest, but she saw the light in her daughter's eyes, the kind that couldn't be dimmed. "If you sing anywhere, you've already given me everything," she whispered. But when Maya walked away, Rosa's hands trembled, and she knew her daughter was chasing more than a dream. She was chasing time itself. That night, thunder rolled over the city, shaking their small rented room. Maya sat cross-legged on the bed, guitar balanced on her knees, replaying a voice memo from Mr. Hollis. "Don't fight the fear. Find the breath." She practiced until her fingers hurt, stopping only when Rosa's cough grew too heavy. She set the guitar aside and held her mother's hand, whispering, "I'll fix this. I'll fix everything." Her mother smiled through her pain, but her eyes glistened with the fear she wouldn't dare speak aloud. The next morning, fate came knocking in the form of a cousin's text. A friend had 2 bus tickets headed west. Departure was noon. Maya's pulse quickened. She packed the guitar, the felt pick, and the flyer like relics of a future she wasn't willing to give up. As they left, rain still clung to the city, dripping from rooftops, like the sky itself was reluctant to let them go. On that wet morning in Chicago, no one watching could have guessed the truth that the little girl with the cardboard stage and the battered guitar was about to step into the spotlight of America's biggest show. And none of them knew that the man smiling from the billboard, judge, millionaire, and household name, wasn't just another celebrity. He was her father. She had never seen him. He had never heard her. But in less than a week their worlds would collide under the brightest lights in Hollywood. And when her voice rose again, the secret he'd buried for 7 years would finally demand to be heard. The Greyhound bus smelled of diesel leather seats and hope too fragile to speak aloud. Maya Delgado pressed her forehead against the glass as the fields of Illinois gave way to endless flatland. Her guitar rested across her lap, the silver coin in her pocket warm from constant touch. Next to her, Rosa shifted uncomfortably, her breath shallow, her scarf pulled tight around her mouth. The rhythmic hum of the engine masked the coughing fits, but Maya noticed everyone. She squeezed her mother's hand. "Just hold on. We're almost there," she whispered, though Los Angeles was still 2,000 miles away. At a rest stop in Nebraska, Rosa collapsed near the vending machines. Maya dropped the guitar case and screamed for help. A nurse named Keisha, traveling to see her own family, knelt down instantly, checked Rosa's pulse, and made her sip water. "You're running on fumes," Keisha said gently, her hand steady while Rosa's trembled. "You need a hospital." Rosa shook her head, fear flashing in her tired eyes. "We can't stop now." Keisha studied Maya's determined face, saw something older than 7 years staring back, and handed her a note. "If she gets worse, take her straight to Cedars-Sinai in L.A. Don't wait." When the bus roared back onto the highway, Maya tucked the note inside her guitar case like another promise she intended to keep. The miles stretched on. Maya practiced quietly, strumming muted chords, her voice just above a whisper, so as not to wake her mother. She replayed Mr. Hollis's voice notes, his gravelly encouragement, a tether between Chicago and the unknown. "Hit the breath, not the fear. The note is a place you visit, not a cliff you fall from." She mouthed the words until they felt like armor. Other passengers dozed, their heads bobbing with each turn of the road. Maya kept her eyes open, afraid that if she blinked too long, everything she loved might slip away. By the time the bus curved into Los Angeles, the morning sun poured over the city like gold spilled too quickly. The streets were noisy, chaotic, alive in a way Chicago never was. Rosa struggled with every step, but insisted on seeing the ocean before anything else. "I want to remember something bigger than pain," she whispered. Maya led her down the wooden planks of the Santa Monica Pier. Salt air stung her eyes, gulls circled above, and the Pacific stretched endlessly before them. Maya balanced her guitar, sat cross-legged near the rail, and began to play. The notes floated over the crash of waves, carrying her voice into the air, heavy with sea breeze and funnel cakes. Tourists stopped. Some tossed dollars. A man filming B-roll for a TV crew motioned for the cameraman to capture her. Her voice rose fragile and steady all at once, pulling strangers into silence. In the crowd, a man in sunglasses paused. He was tall, polished, distracted by a phone call. His name was Daniel Whitaker, a judge on American Star, and a man whose past carried more shadows than he admitted. For a few seconds, he froze, the sound of Maya's voice reaching something buried deep inside. His chest tightened in a way he hadn't felt in years. He ended the call without goodbye. He watched her sing a line that felt strangely familiar, then turned and walked away before memory finished its work. He told himself it was nothing. Just another child with a decent voice. But he walked faster, as though running from something unseen. Maya never noticed him. She noticed the magician near the arcade, though. He clapped after her last verse and flipped a coin from behind her ear. "For luck, little star," he said with a wink, pressing the shiny piece into her palm. Maya laughed, showing it to her mother, and tucked it next to Mr. Hollis's felt pick. The world had begun handing her tokens, small reminders that maybe, just maybe, she was on the right path. They counted tips that night at a cheap motel in Hollywood, enough for 2 nights of safety, and a hot shower that groaned like an old man. Rosa coughed through dinner a burrito too big for her appetite. Maya tore hers in half and saved the rest for morning. Tomorrow, Rosa said, trying to smile, we find the theater. Maya nodded, but she was already memorizing every creak of the guitar, every word of the song that had carried them this far. The next day they walked down Hollywood Boulevard past costumed characters and star-shaped tiles embedded in the sidewalk. The Dolby Theater rose before them, massive and glittering a palace of sound. For a moment, Maya's small shoulders slumped. How could her voice fill something so enormous? Rosa reached for her hand. A stage is just another sidewalk, she said softly. And you've already conquered that. Inside, the lobby pulsed with nervous energy. Contestants clutched sheet music, water bottles, and dreams. Some wore sequins, others designer shoes. Maya looked down at her worn sneakers and tightened her grip on the guitar case. A production assistant scanned her wristband and marked her number A413. The digits felt heavy like destiny disguised as ink. She swallowed hard and stood taller. That evening, when they returned to their motel, Rosa's cough grew violent. Maya rubbed her back until it eased, then laid the silver coin on the nightstand next to the felt pick. She touched both before crawling into bed. For luck, she whispered into the dim room, for Mama, for everything. Rosa closed her eyes, too tired to reply, but her hand reached across the sheets until it found Maya's. She squeezed once, the kind of squeeze that says, I believe in you, even when I'm too weak to say it out loud. Outside, Los Angeles buzzed with lights, traffic, and endless noise. Inside, in that cramped room, a 7-year-old girl held on to promises larger than the city itself. She had no idea that the man who paused at the pier unsettled by her song was the same man who would sit in judgment of her dreams. She didn't know he was her father. All she knew was that tomorrow she would walk into the Dolby Theater with a guitar, a coin, a pick, and a voice carrying both desperation and hope. And when she opened her mouth to sing, she would do it for the only person who had ever believed she could move mountains, her mother. The Dolby Theater felt like another world. Chandeliers glowed against red velvet walls. Stage lights hummed, and the air carried that mix of perfume and electricity unique to show business. Maya Delgado's number A413 was scribbled in black on her wrist, and every time she looked down at it, her heart kicked a little harder. She sat with her guitar case balanced across her knees, Rosa's trembling hand resting on her shoulder. Rosa's face was pale, her eyes heavy, but her smile was steady. Remember, she whispered, don't just sing from your throat. Sing from the place that keeps you alive. Backstage was chaos. Contestants stretched their limbs, belted, warm-up notes, whispered prayers. Sequins glittered under fluorescent bulbs. One girl in her 20s tapped her heel on the floor mouthing scales, while a boy rehearsed beatboxing in a corner. Maya watched them all, feeling impossibly small in her sneakers and hand-me-down jacket. She rubbed the silver coin in her pocket, the magician's gift, then touched the felt pick Mr. Hollis had given her back in Chicago. They were her anchors. A young stagehand with a headset crouched down at her eye level. I'm Noah, he said, grinning like an older brother. I'll walk you out there. If your mic slips, I'll fix it. If you trip, I'll help you back up. Deal. Maya nodded, too nervous to speak, but his steady tone calmed her heartbeat for a moment. When her number was called, Noah guided her to the wings. The stage stretched out like an ocean under glaring white lights. From behind the curtain she heard the muffled hum of cameras and an audience waiting. She tightened her grip on the guitar case. Rosa coughed behind her, but forced her voice steady. You've got this, baby. The doors opened and Maya stepped into the brightness. The stage swallowed her, yet somehow she stood taller. At the curved table in front of her, 3 judges waited. Jessica Lee, a country star whose reputation was fierce, but whose eyes softened when she saw the small girl before her, leaned forward with a smile. Beside her sat Ariel Stone, a Broadway producer with sharp glasses and sharper words. And in the center was Daniel Whitaker's suit, pressed cufflinks glinting his expression unreadable. "Hello there," Jessica said warmly. "What's your name, Maya Delgado?" Her voice wavered, then steadied. "And why are you here today?" Ariel asked, pen tapping against his notes. Maya swallowed. "My mom is sick. She needs surgery we can't afford. I sing on the street, but it's not enough. If I win this, I can save her." The room went silent. The audience behind the cameras hushed. Jessica blinked away emotion. Ariel's pen froze mid-tap. Daniel sat straighter, eyes narrowing, studying her face with something that looked like unease. "And what will you be singing for us?" Daniel's tone was softer than he intended. "My mama's favorite. You are my sunshine." Jessica nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart. Whenever you're ready." Maya planted her feet, remembering Noah's advice about balance. She placed her guitar strap across her shoulder, strummed once to check tuning, and touched the coin in her pocket. Her gaze flicked to Rosa, who sat just off stage, thin and shaking, but smiling with pride. Then Maya closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and began. The first line came out quiet, almost fragile. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." The sound carried into the rafters, soft but unshakable. She let the second verse climb stronger, her voice weaving pain and hope together. By the time she reached "You'll never know, dear, how much I love you," the auditorium was holding its breath. Jessica clasped her hands together, visibly moved. Ariel leaned forward, pen forgotten. But Daniel's world tilted violently. The voice on that stage was not just a contestant's. It was familiar, impossibly so, each note unstitched 7 years of denial. He remembered a nursery painted coral, a lullaby sung late at night, a baby's tiny fist clutching his shirt button. He had buried those memories under business deals and headlines. Now, standing under the blinding lights was proof that time had not erased what he tried so hard to forget. The shape of her eyes, the tilt of her chin, the stubborn clarity in her voice, it all crashed into him. His hand trembled on the desk. His pen slipped to the floor. He couldn't breathe. Without warning, he pushed his chair back. The sound of it, scraping across the floor, echoed louder than applause. "We need 5 minutes," he muttered, standing abruptly. Jessica and Ariel exchanged startled glances. The audience buzzed with confusion. Maya froze mid-bow, terror rising in her chest. Had she done something wrong? Jessica leaned forward quickly. "Don't worry, honey. You were beautiful. Sometimes a judge just needs a moment." Her words steadied Maya, though her stomach twisted. Daniel strode down the side hallway, pulse racing. He pressed both hands against the cool wall, trying to breathe. His assistant caught up. "Sir, are you all right?" "Get me everything on contestant 8.3, Daniel whispered hoarsely. "Her name is Maya Delgado. Family records, medical history, everything. Now. Sir, now." 20 minutes later, Daniel sat in a small office staring at a file that confirmed what his heart already knew. Maya Delgado, born 7 years ago. Mother Rosa Delgado. Formerly Rosa Martinez, known briefly on stage as a singer in Chicago. Medical records showed cancer treatment at public hospitals, unpaid bills stacking like weights on a scale. The dates lined up. The child's age lined up. His past long buried had just stood before him and sung the lullaby he used to hum in the dark. When Daniel returned to the judges' table, his face was composed, but his eyes betrayed a storm. Maya stood waiting, her small hands gripping her guitar strap so tightly her knuckles were white. The other 2 judges gave their verdicts first. "It's a yes from me," Jessica said, smiling through her tears. "You have something special that no one can teach." "Yes," Ariel agreed, nodding firmly. "You sing with your soul. That's rare." All eyes turned to Daniel. Maya's chest rose and fell quickly. Her gaze locked on him with trembling hope. The silence stretched too long. Daniel cleared his throat. "Maya," he said slowly. Choosing each word like it might shatter if you could have anything in the world, what would it be? She answered without hesitation. "For my mom to get better." The words sliced him open. His voice shook as he said, "Then I have nothing else to add except yes. 1,000 times yes." The room erupted in applause. Maya's face lit up relief, washing over her like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She turned to find Rosa, who was wiping tears from her cheeks with a trembling hand. Backstage, Noah gave her a thumbs up. Daniel forced himself to sit still, outwardly composed, while inside his heart was unraveling. He had just given approval to the daughter he had abandoned without ever knowing her. She didn't recognize him. She had no idea her father had been sitting 10 feet away, drowning in guilt and wonder. And he had no idea how to tell her the truth. For now, he only knew one thing: he would not walk away again. The week after her audition felt like a blur of rehearsals, interviews, and whispered conversations between producers about the girl with the voice that stops a room. Maya Delgado didn't understand half of what was being said, but she felt the weight of it pressing on her small shoulders. The other contestants were older, polished, some with managers and publicists already circling. She was just a 7-year-old with a guitar too big for her arms, and a mother whose health was slipping further each day. Back at the motel, Rosa tried to smile through her pain. She made jokes about the lumpy pillows, teased Maya about how she was becoming a Hollywood star, and insisted she was fine. But when she thought Maya was asleep, she coughed until her body shook. Maya lay awake, listening, her hand gripping the silver coin the magician had given her, praying, silently for strength she wasn't sure she had. At the next round of rehearsals, Maya walked onto the empty stage, the weight of her guitar strap biting into her small shoulder. The Dolby Theater looked even larger without the audience, the seats stretching endlessly into the shadows. Noah crouched beside her, fixing her mic. "Remember, it's just a room," he said gently. "Don't sing for them. Sing for her." He nodded toward Rosa, sitting in the back row wrapped in a scarf, her skin pale, but her eyes glowing with pride. Maya strummed the opening chord, and her voice rose, tentative at first, then steady. The sound echoed through the cavernous space, filling it with something raw and unpolished but undeniably powerful. Jessica Lee, who had slipped in quietly to watch rehearsal, clapped softly when Maya finished. "That right there," she said, "is what makes people believe." But belief couldn't hide reality. That night, Rosa collapsed in the motel bathroom, her body too weak to stand. Maya screamed for help, and within minutes paramedics were wheeling her mother out on a stretcher. The ride to Cedars-Sinai was a blur of flashing lights and cold fear. Maya held her mother's hand until the nurses pulled her back. "We'll take care of her, sweetheart," one said kindly, but the words felt like air. At the hospital, doctors spoke in terms Maya barely understood: metastasis, urgent surgery, limited window. She sat in the corner of the waiting room, clutching her guitar case like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Hours passed, each one heavier than the last. Unseen to her, Daniel Whitaker paced the hallway just one floor above. He had received the call from his investigator confirming everything. Rosa Delgado was indeed Rosa Martinez, the woman he had once loved, the woman he had left. And Maya, the little girl with the fierce eyes and haunting voice, was his daughter. He pressed his hand against the cold glass of the window, watching the city below flicker with indifferent light. For the first time in years, the world of contracts and cameras felt meaningless. He pulled every string he could. The best oncologist in Los Angeles was summoned in the middle of the night. A surgical team with credentials longer than the hallway prepared for Rosa's operation. Anonymously, the bills were paid in advance. No delays, no compromises. Daniel instructed quietly, his voice breaking in ways his assistant had never heard. Meanwhile, Maya wandered into the hospital chapel, a small room tucked away on the ground floor. She set her guitar on her lap and began to play Amazing Grace. Her voice cracked on the high notes, but the sincerity cut deeper than perfection ever could. A nurse paused in the doorway, tears filling her eyes. A doctor sat in the back row, head bowed, letting the sound carry him through his exhaustion. Someone recorded a snippet on their phone, and by morning the video was spreading online with the caption, "Even in the darkest nights, grace can be heard." Back in the ICU, Rosa lay connected to machines that beeped steadily. Maya climbed onto the chair beside her bed, took her mother's hand and whispered, "I'm going to keep singing, Mama. I'll win this for you. You just have to hold on." Rosa squeezed her fingers faintly, her strength fading but her love still burning. At the next competition round, Maya arrived straight from the hospital, exhaustion etched across her small face. Producers offered to postpone her performance, but she shook her head. "My mama needs this," she said firmly. "I promised her." She stepped onto the stage, her guitar slung low, and began to sing. This time, it wasn't just for her mother. It was for every child who had ever been scared of losing the person they loved most. The auditorium fell into silence. Even the crew, usually distracted with headsets and cables, stood still. Her voice carried pain, but also defiance, a refusal to let despair win. When the final note faded, Jessica wiped her cheeks openly. Ariel Stone muttered, "That's the sound of a soul older than her years." And Daniel, his hands trembling beneath the table, forced himself to keep his expression neutral, even as his heart shattered and reformed in the same breath. That night, Rosa's surgery went forward. It was long and grueling, but successful. When the surgeon finally emerged, he told Maya, "Your mama is strong. She's still fighting." Maya burst into tears, clutching the silver coin so tightly it left an imprint in her palm. In her motel room later, she sat by the window looking out at the city lights. "Please, let her be okay," she whispered to the night. "I'll keep singing, I'll keep fighting, just don't take her away from me." She didn't know that just blocks away, Daniel was standing at his penthouse window whispering his own plea to the skyline. "Please give me another chance. Let me fix what I broke." Neither knew the other's prayer, but both were bound by the same fragile hope that grace could hold them through the fire until morning came. Final night at the Dolby arrived like a storm that had been building for weeks. The theater glowed gold against the Los Angeles sky, every seat filled, every camera trained on the stage where dreams lived or died in the span of a single song. For Maya Delgado, the weight of the night was heavier than her guitar. She had survived the rounds, carried her voice through exhaustion and fear, and now stood at the threshold of something she couldn't fully name. This was about more than a competition. It was about her mother still recovering in the hospital. It was about a promise she had made on a cracked Chicago sidewalk. It was about a song that carried more history than she understood. Backstage, Rosa had insisted on being wheeled in. She was pale, her scarf hiding the remnants of her hair loss, but her eyes sparkled like they had when Maya was a baby. "Don't look at me when you sing," Rosa whispered, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Look at the lights. Let them carry you. But no, I'll be listening to every word." Noah crouched down again, just like he had at the audition. "You've already won, kiddo," he told her. "All that's left is to share what you've been carrying inside." He fixed her mic, straightened her strap, and gave her a thumbs up. Maya nodded, clutching the silver coin in her fist one last time before stepping toward the curtain. The audience hushed as she walked into the spotlight. She looked impossibly small under the towering set, her guitar almost comically large against her frame. Jessica leaned forward, smiling softly. Ariel adjusted his glasses, watching intently. And Daniel Whitaker, seated between them, felt his heart slam against his ribs. He had sat in this chair for years, heard thousands of hopefuls sing. But tonight, the girl standing center stage was his daughter. She didn't know not yet. And every beat of his heart screamed that he could not keep the truth buried much longer. "What will you be singing tonight?" Jessica asked gently. "My mama's favorite," Maya answered, her voice clear, despite the tremor in her hands. "It's called You Are My Sunshine," the audience murmured with recognition. Daniel's jaw tightened. That lullaby had once been his, too. He remembered whispering it to a newborn in a crib he barely visited before ambition pulled him away. Now the melody was about to pull him back to the life he had abandoned. Maya strummed the opening chord. The first notes floated out soft and haunting. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Her voice carried innocence, layered with something deeper, something born of hardship and fierce love. As the song built, she closed her eyes, pouring every ounce of fear, hope, and devotion into the melody. The words were not just lyrics, they were her plea to the world to save the person who meant everything to her. In the first row, Rosa's tears slipped silently down her cheeks. The theater disappeared for her, for it was just her daughter singing their song, the lullaby that had soothed her through hospital nights and gave her reason to fight. By the second verse, the audience was on their feet, clapping softly in rhythm, as though afraid to break the fragile magic in the air. Jessica covered her mouth openly, weeping. Ariel shook his head in disbelief, whispering, "This is lightning in a bottle." But Daniel was breaking. Every note pierced through the armor he had built over 7 years. He saw his child not as a contestant, but as the baby he had left behind, the baby who had somehow grown into this remarkable girl without him. He mouthed the words with her, his chest aching as if the melody itself was demanding he finally step out of the shadows. The final line hung in the air. "Please don't take my sunshine away." The auditorium erupted. Cheers, applause, whistles, the sound of 1,000 strangers acknowledging they had witnessed something rare and unforgettable. Maya curtsied shyly, her eyes scanning for her mother. Rosa lifted her hand, weak but proud, and Maya smiled through her tears. Jessica leaned into her mic. "That was the most moving performance I've ever seen on this stage." Ariel added, "Maya, you don't just sing, you remind us why music matters." Then all eyes turned to Daniel. His breath came uneven. He looked at Maya, saw the hope burning in her gaze, and knew he could not remain silent. He stood slowly, microphone in hand. The theater fell silent again, sensing something unprecedented. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel began, his voice thick with emotion. "I have judged hundreds of performances on this stage, but tonight something happened that has never happened before." He turned to Maya, his eyes shining. "The truth is, Maya Delgado is my daughter." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maya froze, the guitar slipping slightly in her arms. She blinked, trying to process the words. Rosa covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. Daniel stepped down from the judges' table and walked toward the stage. Maya's voice cracked into the mic. "You're my dad?" He nodded, climbing the steps. "Yes, sweetheart. I am, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I walked away when I shouldn't have, but I see you now, I hear you, and I will never walk away again." The audience held its collective breath. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Why did you leave?" Daniel dropped to his knees in front of her. "Because I was selfish and blind. I thought my dreams mattered more than family. I was wrong. You and your mama were the dream I should have never let go." The silence broke as Rosa was wheeled to the side of the stage. She reached out her hand, trembling. Daniel looked at her with shame and longing. "Rosa," he whispered, "I'm sorry." She met his eyes steadily. "It's not me you need to ask. It's her." Maya stood frozen between them, torn between anger and yearning. Then slowly she placed her small hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Do you promise?" she asked, her voice small but fierce. "I promise," he said, his voice breaking, "for the rest of my life." The host stepped forward, visibly moved. "I think we already know who tonight's winner is," he announced. "Maya Delgado, you have not only touched hearts with your voice, you've brought a family back together." Confetti rained down as the audience roared. Maya clung to her mother, then turned and hugged her father, awkward and trembling, but real. For the first time in 7 years, the Delgado family was no longer broken. Later, as cameras flashed and interviews swarmed, Maya looked at the man who was both judge and father. "You said I was your sunshine," she whispered. He smiled through tears. "You always have been." And under the dazzling lights of the Dolby, with her mother beside her and her father finally returned, Maya realized the prize was never just the $1 million or the trophy. The real victory was love reclaimed, promises renewed, and the family she thought she'd lost forever standing together at last. From the very first note on a rainy street corner to the confetti falling inside the Dolby Theater, Maya Delgado's story was one of resilience, love, and redemption. What began as a child's desperate attempt to raise money for her mother's treatment became a journey that reunited a broken family and reminded millions of people of the true meaning of hope. Maya sang not for fame or fortune, but because her mother's life depended on it. Each performance carried the weight of late-night hospital visits, mounting bills, and whispered prayers. Yet every time she stepped on stage, she transformed pain into something powerful, a voice that refused to break no matter how heavy the burden. Rosa, her mother, embodied grace in the face of suffering. Even as illness weakened her body, she never let it dim her faith in her daughter. She gave Maya the courage to believe that music could heal not only her, but the world around them. And she was right. For Daniel Whitaker, the millionaire judge, Maya's voice cracked open the walls he had spent years building around his regrets. In the sound of her song, he heard both the child he had abandoned and the man he still had a chance to become. His confession on that final night was not just about truth, it was about choosing to step back into the life he should never have left, no matter how late. In the end, Maya didn't just win a competition. She won back her mother's health, her father's love, and the chance to grow up knowing that her voice had the power to change lives. For those who watched, her story became more than entertainment. It became a testament to the strength of love and the courage of a child who refused to give up. And what lesson do we take with us? Life will hand each of us trials we never asked for: illness, betrayal, financial hardship. But like Maya, we can choose to keep going. We can choose courage over despair, forgiveness over bitterness, and hope over fear. We can remember that second chances exist not just for others, but for ourselves. If Maya's story touched your heart, let it remind you that love and faith can turn even the darkest chapters into something beautiful. And if you want to keep hearing stories that inspire and heal, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us bring you more powerful content stories that remind us of who we are and what truly matters. Click subscribe, join this journey, and let's keep the light of hope alive together.